Clara Whitmore had always prided herself on her precision. From color palettes to seating charts, nothing ever escaped her meticulous eye. Her life in Brighton was carefully curated, floral mugs in perfect rows, white linen curtains that fluttered like pages in the morning breeze, and a husband whose routines were as predictable as the tides. But all it took was a single misplaced tablet on the kitchen island to shatter that illusion. It was a Sunday morning. Clara had just finished her second cup of Earl Grey and was tidying up after breakfast. Julian, her husband, had left in a hurry to attend a last-minute staff meeting at the university. He had forgotten his tablet, something he rarely did. She hadn't meant to snoop. Honestly, she hadn't. The screen lit up as she wiped the surface, and a message popped up. Still thinking about last night. Can't wait to see you again. XL. Her heart didn't race. It froze. For a moment, Clara simply stared, willing the message to vanish, to be a misunderstanding, a joke. But curiosity, or perhaps something deeper, guided her fingers. There were more. Dozens of them. Photos. Voice notes. Secret meetups carefully choreographed between lectures and weekends when Clara thought Julian was at academic retreats. The name Layla came up repeatedly. Young. Clever. And far too familiar. Clara remembered Julian mentioning a student by that name during dinner once, calling her bright and eager. The perfect affair, Clara thought bitterly. Cloaked in the innocence of academia, hidden behind essays and research grants. Her hands trembled, but her mind was eerily calm. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She powered off the device, poured herself another cup of tea, and sat by the window, watching the sea stretch into the grey horizon. If Julian thought he could humiliate her and carry on undisturbed, he was mistaken. Clara Whitmore had built a career planning flawless events, solving last-minute disasters with grace and confidence. She knew how to turn chaos into art. And now, she was about to plan something far more personal. Not revenge, exactly. Something smarter. She needed someone who could play a role. Someone handsome. Charming. Dangerous, even. She opened her laptop. Typed in a few keywords. Paused. Then, with an exhale, she pressed enter. She had just hired a man to seduce her husband's mistress. And it was going to be spectacular. Clara wasn't sure what she expected. A shadowy man in a raincoat, perhaps. Someone who smelled of cigarettes and past regrets. Instead, when Lucas Thorne stepped into the quiet wine bar in Hove, he looked like he had just walked off the set of a West End play. Tall. Crisp navy coat. Brown hair swept carelessly to the side. And a smile that could disarm even the most guarded heart. He spotted Clara immediately and offered a slight nod before approaching. "You must be Mrs. Whitmore," he said, removing his gloves. His voice was smooth, clipped, with a trace of London in the vowels. "Clara," she replied, shaking his hand. "Let's not make this sound like a solicitor's appointment." He laughed, warm, polite. Then sat down across from her. The bar was nearly empty. Jazz drifted through the speakers, and the scent of spiced red wine lingered in the air. Clara had chosen the place carefully. Neutral territory. Elegant, but not extravagant. Just like the plan she was about to unfold. "I read your message," Lucas said, leaning back. "And I must admit, it's the most unusual request I've received in quite some time. I assume it's not the first." He raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "No, but this one's deeply personal." Clara stirred her wine. "Julian's clever. He'll notice if I act differently. But Layla, she's young. Naive. Hungry for attention. I want you to give it to her. Flatter her. Make her doubt every whisper Julian's ever told her. Then walk away. Let her do the breaking. Lucas took a breath. And what happens if she falls for me properly? She won't, Clara said sharply. Then paused. But if she does, well, that's her mistake. There was a moment of silence between them. A shift in the air. Lucas studied her, not just with his eyes, but as if he were deciphering a role. A character. A woman composed, yet unraveled beneath the surface. You don't want revenge, he said finally. You want control. Clara looked up, startled. But instead of denying it, she met his gaze and said, exactly. Lucas nodded. Very well. Tell me where to find her. Clara slid a small envelope across the table. Inside were photos, addresses, a loose schedule based on Julian's texts. She had planned everything meticulously, Layla's yoga classes, favorite cafes, and even the bookshop where she worked part-time. Lucas didn't flinch at the detail. He simply pocketed the envelope. I'll introduce myself casually. Let it unfold naturally. If she's half as easy to charm as you suspect, this won't take long. Clara hesitated. And if she's cleverer than I thought? He smiled again, that same perfect, easy smile. Then it gets interesting. They left separately. Clara walked back to her car under the dim orange glow of the street lamps, her heels tapping steadily against the pavement. She had done it. She had set it in motion. But as she sat behind the wheel, fingers curled around the leather steering wheel, a flicker of doubt passed through her. It was quick, barely a breath. Yet it stayed with her all the way home. Because now, the game had truly begun. The bell above the bookshop door chimed gently as Lucas stepped inside. The shop was tucked away on a quiet street in central Brighton, its large windows fogged slightly from the chill outside. Inside, it smelled of old pages, roasted coffee from the cafe corner, and something faintly floral, perhaps the perfume of its usual patrons. He took off his coat and scanned the room, casual but alert. Layla was behind the till. She was prettier in person than the photos had captured, her beauty not in symmetry, but in movement. Her hair was tied up carelessly, a pencil tucked behind one ear. She was mid-laugh with a customer, her voice soft, melodic. Lucas let his eyes drift to the shelf nearby, pretending to browse while waiting for his moment. When the customer left, he approached the counter with a book in hand, the picture of Dorian Gray. He set it down gently. Still a favorite after all these years, he said, smiling. Layla looked up, slightly startled. Then she returned the smile, though guarded. It's always the cover that draws people in, she replied. Then the cynicism keeps them hooked. Lucas chuckled. Cynicism can be charming. In the right company. She tilted her head, examining him briefly. Are you visiting Brighton? Just moved here, actually. Needed a change of pace. I'm Lucas. Layla, she replied. Welcome to the madness. He pretended to look around, amused. Seems more peaceful than mad. Oh, give it time. This street is quiet, but the locals are eccentric. You'll love them or run screaming. Lucas let out a low laugh. That's promising. She rang up the book. Are you more reader or collector? Reader. Always. But I like to pretend I have taste when I stack them on the shelf. Their eyes met again. This time, there was a flicker of something. Curiosity. Recognition, perhaps not of a person, but a presence. Layla's posture shifted slightly, still professional, but not distant. He reached for his wallet. Do you have any recommendations? That depends. Her voice lowered, almost teasing. Are you trying to impress someone, or are you actually going to read it? Lucas played along. Bit of both, maybe. Layla smirked. Honesty. That's rare. He left with 2 books and a promise to return. The encounter had been short, light-hearted. But Layla had laughed. And more importantly, she had remembered him. Lucas walked down the street, hands in pockets, his breath rising in clouds. The first thread had been pulled. That evening, he texted Clara. Spoke to her. She took the bait. Subtle interest, nothing forced. I'll return in a few days. Clara replied almost instantly. Good. Keep it slow. No mistakes. I want her to think she's in control. Lucas read the message twice. No mistakes. He tossed his phone onto the table of his small flat and poured himself a whiskey. He had done this sort of thing before, played a role, said what needed saying, disappeared before hearts got broken. But there was something about this job that didn't sit neatly. Not yet. Maybe it was Clara, with her composed fury and glassy smile. Or maybe it was Layla, young, yes, but not the reckless flirt he'd expected. Still, he'd accepted the contract. And he intended to finish it. But already, the lines were beginning to blur. Clara stood before the mirror in her bedroom, the soft glow of the evening light casting shadows across her face. She traced her finger over the neckline of her blouse, her mind elsewhere. It had been 4 days since Lucas's first encounter with Layla, and she hadn't heard from him since the brief update. That silence was maddening. She told herself she trusted him, after all, she had chosen him precisely for his detachment. But even the most polished plans left room for friction. For unpredictability. And Clara despised unpredictability. Downstairs, Julian was in his study. The man still moved through the house as though nothing had changed. He kissed her cheek in the mornings, complimented the meals she never cooked, and even asked about her work with that same weary, worn-out affection he had always used. Clara watched him more closely now. She noticed things, his silence when his phone buzzed, the way he smiled slightly while replying, his casual lies about faculty meetings or late submissions. It was insulting, really. How sloppy he had become. She stepped away from the mirror and headed down the hallway, slowing as she approached Julian's study. The door was slightly ajar. She hesitated, then pushed it gently open. He didn't notice her. His back was turned, hunched over his desk. And on his screen, there it was again. Layla's name. Clara didn't speak. She closed the door silently and walked away. Let the fool dig his own grave. That night, Lucas finally messaged her. She invited me for a drink. I suggested somewhere near the pier. Tomorrow evening. She thinks it's her idea. She's flirting now. Curious. Guards beginning to drop. Clara stared at the message for a long moment, then typed. Do not sleep with her. Not yet. Draw her in slowly. I want her to chase. Lucas replied with a thumbs-up emoji. Clara rolled her eyes. The next day passed in a blur. Meetings. Email threads. Endless phone calls with anxious clients. But beneath it all, her mind wandered, imagining Layla dressing for the evening, choosing lipsticks, playing games she had no idea she had already lost. That evening, it rained. The Brighton pier glittered through the drizzle, the lights blurring in reflections across the puddled pavement. Lucas arrived first, of course. He always arrived first. He wore a simple grey coat, a wool scarf, and just enough cologne to be remembered. Layla appeared 15 minutes later, hair damp but cheeks flushed with anticipation. She wore a leather jacket over a pale dress and smiled shyly when she spotted him. You actually came, she said, brushing her hair back. I'm punctual, Lucas replied, holding the door open to the little wine bar overlooking the sea. And curious. They talked for over an hour. About music. Books. Her ambitions. His made-up career in consulting. It was seamless, the way he played his role, charming, but never too eager. Interested, but elusive enough to remain desirable. Layla leaned closer as the evening wore on, her laughter more frequent, her glances more loaded. By the time they stepped outside again, the rain had stopped, leaving behind that fresh, clean scent only the sea could conjure. "Would you like to walk a bit?" she asked, almost nervously. Lucas hesitated just long enough to seem sincere, then nodded. They strolled down the nearly empty promenade, their conversation softening into something slower, more intimate. Layla spoke of loneliness, of pressure, of how sometimes she just wanted to be wanted, not for her potential, but for who she already was. Lucas didn't say much. He listened. And when she looked up at him, her eyes uncertain and searching, he gently touched her cheek. Not a kiss. Not yet. "Good night, Layla," he said softly. "Let's not rush a beautiful thing." Then he walked away, his footsteps fading into the mist. Layla stood there for a long time, her expression unreadable. And in a dark car parked across the street, Clara watched everything unfold. For days after the encounter on the pier, Layla was not herself. She drifted through her shifts at the bookshop, barely noticing the titles she shelved or the customers she served. Her friends' chatter felt distant, like echoes from another room. Even Julian's messages, once thrilling, now felt pale compared to the spark Lucas had lit with just a few words and a single touch. She replayed the evening in her mind like a melody stuck on repeat. The way he looked at her, really looked at her, had made something shift. There had been no chase, no desperation. Just a man who seemed genuinely intrigued, and just out of reach. Meanwhile, Lucas waited. He did not contact her. No texts. No suggestive follow-up. And in that silence, Layla grew restless. By the third day, she caved. She texted him. "Still fancy another walk by the sea? Or was one enough for you?" She waited 10 minutes. Then came the reply. "Still waiting for the right breeze. And the right company. Tomorrow. Same spot." She smiled. And across town, Clara read the forwarded exchange with a quiet satisfaction. But her satisfaction was short-lived. That evening, she attended a gala at a local museum, a networking event disguised as a charity auction. Julian was meant to attend with her, but had cancelled last minute, citing a department emergency. She went alone, wearing a black velvet gown and a practiced smile. Halfway through the evening, as she stood beside a sculpture of broken glass arranged into wings, she overheard two women speaking in hushed tones. "That girl again. She's always hovering around Julian at faculty drinks. Blonde, works part-time somewhere in the lanes." Clara didn't react. She simply sipped her wine and turned to face the wings. But the words rang in her ears. Hovering. Still. Whatever Lucas was doing, Layla hadn't let go of Julian. Later that night, she confronted Lucas in a call. "She's still seeing him." Lucas didn't deny it. "It's early. She's testing both of us. It's what people do when they're unsure where their desire lies." Clara paced her living room, the sea breeze whispering through the cracked window. "I hired you to destroy that relationship. Not to become a second option." Lucas was silent for a beat. Then, calmly, he said, "If you want her to fall, she must climb first. Let her believe she has power over two men. It will make the fall more satisfying." Clara didn't like the way he said satisfying. She ended the call without another word. The next evening, Layla arrived at the pier 5 minutes early. Lucas was already there. They walked again, this time slower, less performative. Layla spoke of things she hadn't told anyone. Her estranged father. Her longing to live in France. Her fear of becoming forgettable. Lucas listened, offered little, yet made her feel heard. As they reached the promenade's end, she turned to him. I think I'm getting in too deep, she said quietly. Lucas met her gaze. Then stepped back. I don't want to, she whispered. She leaned in, and this time, he didn't stop her. The kiss was soft. Hesitant. But it landed like a stone dropped in still water, ripples spreading further than either of them expected. Lucas let her linger there a moment longer before he pulled away gently. I'll see you soon, he said. Layla smiled, shy and glowing. She didn't see the shadow of Clara's car parked in the next road. And Lucas didn't check his phone for Clara's approval. That night, he didn't send an update at all. Lucas' heart had always kept a precise distance between role and reality. For years, his work as a freelance actor and occasional undercover operative demanded this separation. He could cry on cue, flirt to perfection, vanish into shadows when the job was done. But with Layla, the edges were blurring. He'd kissed her not because it was in the plan, but because he wanted to. And now, he couldn't stop thinking about it. The next morning, Clara called. He ignored it. Then she texted. We need to talk. Now. Lucas replied after a full hour. Later. I'm busy. Clara stared at the message, her jaw clenched. It wasn't like him to be this vague. Detached, yes. But never dismissive. She felt something slip, something vital. As if the contract between them had changed shape without her consent. She went to his flat in Hove that evening, unannounced. Lucas opened the door, shirtless and calm. Clara, he said, not surprised. I was just thinking about you. Clara stepped inside, brushing past him. The flat was simple, bookshelves lined with philosophy texts, vinyl records stacked in the corner, the faint scent of sea air lingering through an open window. She didn't sit. She faced him. You kissed her. Lucas raised an eyebrow. Yes. You were not meant to kiss her. She kissed me first. Clara's voice sharpened. But you let it happen. Lucas poured himself a drink. I thought that was the point. You know what I mean, she snapped. He looked at her then, and for the first time, there was something unreadable in his expression. I know exactly what you mean, he said softly. You wanted her destroyed. Humiliated. But now that she's falling, you're no longer sure if it's revenge or jealousy driving you. Clara froze. Be careful, Clara, Lucas added. You're playing with fire you lit yourself. Clara left without another word, her mind spinning. Meanwhile, Layla floated through the week in a daze of contradiction. She told herself she was still in love with Julian, but she ignored his messages. She told herself Lucas was just a distraction, yet she found excuses to walk past the cafe where she knew he liked to sit on Sundays. She started dressing differently, subtler colors, less skin. She began reading Camus and Murakami, quoting them in her Instagram stories as if she'd always loved existentialism. People noticed. Especially Julian. He invited her to a private gathering at his cottage on the outskirts of Brighton. A small fire pit evening with wine and jazz. Just 4 colleagues and a handful of postgraduate students. Layla hesitated. Then agreed. That night, under a string of soft garden lights, Layla played the role she used to know so well. She laughed at Julian's jokes, curled into the chair next to him, let his hand brush against hers beneath the table. But her eyes kept drifting to her phone. Lucas hadn't messaged in 3 days. Julian noticed her distraction. You're not with me tonight, he said lowly, once they were alone in the kitchen. Layla shrugged. Just tired. Julian watched her. Or guilty. She stiffened. Why would I be? I don't know. You tell me. She hated how quickly his charm turned to suspicion. How easily he could make her feel small. She left the party early, claiming a headache. As she stepped into the cold night air, she finally messaged Lucas. Did I do something wrong? Or are you done with me already? No reply. That silence followed her into bed. Across town, Lucas stared at the message on his screen. He'd written a reply 3 times. Deleted each one. He didn't know what he wanted anymore. And in that uncertainty, the game began to shift. Not because the rules had changed, but because the players had. Clara moved like a ghost through her office the following day, the glass walls of her London firm reflecting her taut silhouette. Her assistant barely dared to breathe when entering the room. Something in Clara's demeanor had changed, her composure fractured, her precision fraying at the edges. She had built her life on being in control. Every case, every client, every confrontation. But this was different. Lucas had always been the constant. The reliable instrument in her orchestrated symphony of justice and vengeance. And now he was off script. She dialed his number again. Straight to voicemail. With a bitter breath, she opened her laptop and did what she swore she'd never do. She accessed his private file. Every client who'd ever hired Lucas went through Clara's office first. She had kept meticulous records, encrypted logs, clean aliases. But Lucas had always had one final card. He chose who got to know him beyond the contract. Until now. There it was. A flagged notation she hadn't seen before. Cambridge. 2018, target, Dr. Julian Cavendish. Client, anonymous. Outcome, contract terminated. Clara narrowed her eyes. Julian? Again. She clicked deeper, but the file had been sealed. By Lucas himself. What was he hiding? Across town, Lucas stood in a tucked-away corner of Hampstead Heath, watching Layla approach. Her hair was windblown, and she wore a long charcoal coat that made her look older, more fragile. You came, she said, slightly out of breath. You asked, he replied, voice level. I didn't think you would. Lucas shrugged. Curiosity got the better of me. They walked in silence for a while, the gravel crunching beneath their shoes. Then Layla said, You're not who I thought you were. Lucas paused. Good or bad? I haven't decided. She looked at him, her expression softening. I've been thinking, maybe I let Julian become everything. My worth, my world. And maybe that's why I let someone like you get close, because part of me wanted to burn it all down. Lucas studied her face. The hint of defiance, the flicker of pain. Are you still with him? He asked. She hesitated. No. Lucas nodded slowly. They stood by a frozen pond, the ducks huddled at the edge, waiting for spring. Why me? She asked, almost whispering. He turned to her. You're asking the wrong question. Then what's the right one? Why now? Layla frowned. Why is this happening now, he said. After you've left him. After you've started to find your voice again. After you've begun to see yourself differently. Maybe I don't want to be that girl anymore, she admitted. Lucas took a step closer. Then stop waiting for someone else to rewrite your story. She blinked up at him. And what are you? I'm just the chapter you didn't plan for. For a moment, the world around them held its breath. Then Layla reached out and brushed his hand. But before she could speak, a shout rang out behind them. Layla! She spun. Julian. He stood a few feet away, coat flapping in the wind, eyes wild. I knew it, he snarled. I knew something was going on. Layla stepped back instinctively, but Lucas didn't move. Julian's stare shifted to him. You've been following her. Manipulating her. No, Layla interrupted. He hasn't. But Julian was already approaching, jaw clenched, fists tight. Lucas stepped in front of her. Don't, he warned quietly. Julian sneered. What are you going to do? Hit me? No, Lucas said. I don't need to. Julian froze as Lucas's expression shifted, not threatening, but dangerous in its stillness. Layla grabbed Lucas's arm. Please, let's just go. But Julian wasn't finished. His eyes narrowed. Who are you? Lucas didn't answer. Instead, he turned to Layla and whispered, I think it's time you knew everything. And just like that, the careful arrangement, Clara's plan, Layla's illusion, Julian's control, began to unravel. The wind swept across the narrow streets of Primrose Hill, as Lucas led Layla away from the confrontation. Neither of them spoke. Julian's furious voice still echoed in her ears, but she forced herself not to look back. Not this time. They stopped outside an old red-brick townhouse, ivy curling up its front, the windows darkened behind drawn curtains. Is this where you live? Layla asked, breathless. Lucas hesitated before nodding. It's where the past lives. Inside, the air was still. Not cold, not warm, just held. Like time had settled into the furniture and refused to move on. Layla glanced around. There were no photographs, no family portraits. Just books. Shelves and shelves of them, as if Lucas had spent his life gathering stories but never daring to tell his own. He gestured towards a worn leather chair. Sit. You should hear it from the beginning. Layla sat, hands folded tightly in her lap. Lucas didn't pace. He didn't fidget. He simply stood by the window, watching the world outside with the same stillness that had unnerved Julian. 7 years ago, he began, I was hired to break up a marriage. The client claimed her husband was emotionally abusive. She wanted to save the woman he was involved with. Layla blinked. What does that have to do with me? Everything, Lucas said quietly. The man was Julian Cavendish. Layla's face went white. I was sent to seduce you. Or rather, to make you see Julian for who he truly was. She stood, eyes wide. That's not possible. 7 years ago, we'd just met. Lucas nodded. And I was already watching. Layla took a step back. You're saying our entire relationship, everything, was part of a contract? No, Lucas replied. That was Clara's plan. But the moment I met you, I stopped following it. The silence crackled like electricity. Layla turned away, gripping the back of the chair. Her mind reeled, trying to piece together every moment, every smile, every whispered truth between them. I told Clara the contract had ended. I lied to her. Because I knew, if I stayed, it wasn't for the job anymore. Layla spun on him. And yet you still stayed. I loved you. The words landed between them like a confession and a curse. Layla stared at him, disbelieving. And all this time, you never told me. I couldn't. Because every time I tried, I remembered the beginning. And I thought, if you ever found out, you'd never forgive me. She shook her head, breath shallow. And what makes you think I can now? Lucas's voice dropped to a whisper. Because now you know the truth. She pressed a hand to her chest. It doesn't change what it meant. Every memory is tainted now. Lucas stepped forward. Or maybe every memory finally makes sense. He pulled a folded sheet of paper from his coat pocket. I kept this. It's the original contract. From Clara. The proof. Layla snatched it from his hand, scanning it, her hands trembling. There it was, her name. Julian's. And Clara's coded signature. She dropped it. It floated gently to the floor, as if the truth refused to land too heavily. Layla looked up, tears brimming. I don't know who to hate more, Clara, for orchestrating this. Or you, for becoming a part of it. Lucas didn't defend himself. He simply said, You were never a job to me. That's why I walked away from it. Layla laughed bitterly. Yet somehow, here we are. The past catching up. The truth choking the air. A knock came at the door. Layla flinched. Lucas stilled. Another knock. 3 slow, deliberate raps. Lucas moved to the door, his eyes never leaving Layla's. Stay here. He opened it. And there she stood. Clara. In her pristine coat, not a strand of hair out of place, holding an envelope in one hand, and a gun in the other. You really should have burned the contract, she said softly. The world seemed to slow as Clara stepped inside, her heels clicking against the wooden floor. Layla instinctively took a step back, her eyes darting between Clara's face and the small pistol she held so casually, as if it were nothing more than a pen. Lucas raised a hand slowly. You don't want to do this. Clara shut the door behind her with a quiet click. Don't patronize me, Lucas. Not after all we've done. All you've done, Layla snapped. You used me. You used him. And for what? Because you were jealous. Clara turned her cold gaze to Layla. Jealousy is such a petty word. Try betrayed. Try discarded like a worn glove. Lucas stepped in front of Layla. You orchestrated this entire mess. You didn't love Julian. You just couldn't stand to lose. Clara's lips curled. Love. Julian was never capable of it. And neither were you, Lucas. Let's not pretend you didn't enjoy playing the hero. Layla's voice trembled, but she forced strength into it. So what happens now, Clara? You silence us both. Is that how this ends? Clara paused, then tossed the envelope onto the coffee table. Inside that is everything. The contract. Emails. Bank transfers. If I go down, I'm taking every last one of you with me. Then why the gun? Lucas asked softly. Clara's smile flickered. Because someone has to be punished. And if it can't be Julian, then it'll be the one who broke ranks. The tension in the room grew so sharp, it might have snapped with a whisper. Layla stepped forward. You won't shoot me. Clara's hand twitched. Because you need someone to see it. To remember you as powerful. Not pathetic. For the briefest second, something in Clara's eyes faltered. Then, she pulled the trigger. The click of an empty chamber echoed like thunder. Lucas exhaled. Clara blinked, stunned. She looked at the gun, then at Lucas. I removed the bullets, he said. Yesterday. I knew you might come. Clara's mask crumbled. Her shoulders sagged, and she let the gun drop to the floor. For the first time, she looked small. Human. Defeated. Police sirens wailed in the distance. Lucas stepped forward and picked up the envelope. This ends now. But Layla's eyes were fixed on Clara. Why? She whispered. Why go this far? Clara met her gaze. Because I gave everything to Julian. And when he left me for you, I had nothing left to lose. Silence fell again, this time deeper. Wounds laid bare, too raw to stitch shut. Outside, the flashing blue lights painted the window panes. It was over. Or so it seemed.